Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars The Black Series action figure review. Today we're taking a look at an absolute banger from the deluxe subline of the Black Series. Finally making his debut in the 6-inch line, we have Savage Opress from Star Wars The Clone Wars, and this is an absolutely phenomenal figure. Hasbro at the moment are releasing consistently fantastic figures in the Black Series, and I feel like with some of my recent reviews I've been a little bit biased because this is another Figure of the Year candidate in my opinion. It really is a fantastic figure, guys. Everything about this one, from the sheer size of the figure to the sculpt, the accessories, the overall detail, it's an absolutely stellar release and I can't recommend this figure enough. So if you haven't added this one to your collection already, you know what to do at this point. Be sure to hit the link in the video description. That will take you to Star Action Figures, and at the time of filming this review, Savage Opress is in stock and available to buy. And like I said, I would not sleep on this figure, guys, especially if you're a Clone Wars fan. This is a figure that we've waited a long time for, and it doesn't disappoint. So let's dive right into this review, and we'll kick things off, as always, by taking a look at the packaging that Savage Opress comes in. So as you can see, pretty standard stuff with regards to the packaging. Obviously being a deluxe figure, the box is slightly bigger than your average Black Series figure, but that's really by the by. The design is pretty much the same. We have the Black Series logo featured at the top and the colour band indicating the media from which the character is depicted. Up the side of the box we have the name of the character and the number in the series, and then in the window itself that orange panel that really does help this figure pop in the box. If you're an inbox collector, this one really does stand out. On the side of the box we have that mural image once again, as you can see, depicting Savage Opress in that live action style. And then on the reverse side we have the image once again, accompanied by a brief description of the character, and once more that colour band, name and media from which he appears. So again, pretty standard stuff, nothing really to write home about. It's the figure inside that really is where it's at. So let's dive into this review and take a look at Savage Opress. And here we have the Night Brother himself, looking very, very cool indeed. And like I said, this is easily a top contender for Figure of the Year 2025 in my opinion. The sculpt on this guy, the overall execution, like I said, the sheer size of the figure, it's got a lot going for it, and it really is a great addition to the collection. Savage Opress is obviously a character that we've been clamouring for in the Black Series for the longest time, and it's another one of those examples where I'm glad that Hasbro waited as long as they did to give him to us, because this really is as good as you could imagine a Savage Opress Black Series figure to be. Now, as you can see, I have removed the weapons from his hands just because they're very large, very cumbersome, and they get in the way a little bit as it pertains to trying to showcase the details and articulation and all that sort of stuff. So we'll get to the accessories later on in this review, but like I said, just to kick things off, I really just want to give you a look at how this figure looks, because aesthetically, this thing is very, very pleasing. It's a really well sculpted figure, really, really nicely painted as well. Like I said, it's just an absolute stunner, and I can't recommend this figure enough. What I really like about it, despite its deluxe price point, is the fact that Hasbro really went to town on the paint applications on this guy. Not only do we have the facial tattoos and just a really cool head sculpt and all the paint apps around that, but the armour itself on the figure is really, really nicely painted, and it's weathered, which I think is something that every Star Wars figure should have. As you can see on the camera there, I hope it shows up, but we have this sort of textured feel to the armour itself. You've got all these dints and dings, but then that weathering really brings out all that sculpted detail, which I think looks absolutely phenomenal. You can especially see it on the shoulder pads here and on these sort of armour plates around the arms. Like I said, the sculpted detail on this figure is absolutely superb, but then that painted detail really brings it out, which is really nice to see. I think from a visual perspective, with regards to the armor, this figure reminds me a lot of Baylan Skoll. That's another really well sculpted and really well painted figure, and that's definitely reflected here with Savage. That painted detail does continue onto the forearm gauntlets as well. Like I said, in the face sculpt, those tattoos are really nice and crisp, really nicely painted there. You've got ornate decoration there on the tabard, coming down the tunic, and then great sculpted and painted details on the boot as well. So Like I said, from a visual standpoint, this figure looks absolutely fantastic. And I know I say it all the time in these reviews, guys, but when you talk about shelf presence and how this figure looks as part of a display, they don't come much better than this. Like I said, he's a massive figure. He stands well over 6 inches. He towers above other characters in the Black series, and I'll give you a bit of a size comparison towards the end of this review. But yeah, like I said, shelf presence, this guy's definitely got it going on, and he looks superb as part of the Clone Wars Black series display. So definitely a figure I'd recommend picking up if you are a fan of the animated series. From an articulation standpoint, this figure is really well done as well. Hasbro packed in all their usual articulation into this figure, and as such you can get him in some absolutely fantastic poses. You can have him squaring off with Maul, with Sidious, you know, holding the vibro axe, holding the lightsaber, you name it, you can pose it, and it really is just a stunning looking figure once you get it set up on the display. One thing I will point out very briefly about this figure before we dive into the articulation is my one and only gripe with the figure, and whether or not it's just my sample or whether this is a widespread issue, be sure to leave a comment down below if your figure suffers from this as well. But just because of how big he is and how heavy he is, the ankle joints on my sample seem to be a little bit loose, and as such he does have a tendency to sort of lean forward and fall over. You've got to get him really right in that sweet spot to be able to stand this guy securely on a shelf without him taking a tumble. So I'd be interested to find out whether that's just an issue with my figure or whether you guys are having that same problem as well. But that's literally my only problem with the figure. Like I said, sculpted detail wise, can't complain. Paint applications, absolutely perfect. Soft goods as well, really good. And that facial sculpt is absolutely spot on. I absolutely love it when Hasbro take these animated characters that we all know and love from the Clone Wars or any other animation project and try and bring them into sort of live action to keep them in theme with other figures from the Black series. And this one is a really well done figure. It looks like Savage from the animated series, but it fits right in with all your live action characters as well. So really good stuff there. Great depth and realism on that facial sculpt, and that is once again due in part to the photoreal face printing tech that they use on these figures. But again, those tattoos really nicely applied, really nice and crisp, and yeah, that head sculpt just looks so menacing. Those horns look fantastic. Just a great looking figure all round. Now, with regards to articulation, like I said, he is packed to the brim, and he does feature the usual ball joint at the head, and we also have the ball joint down at the base of the neck, so you can get this one in some really cool poses. We have butterfly joints at the shoulders, and these are really nicely done. There's a very deep cut there, so you can get a nice angle on those arms, and that really comes in handy when displaying this figure with either the vibro axe or the lightsaber and posing the figure with those weapons in two hands. The shoulder plates on the armour are on the sort of loop, very similar to the clones and stormtroopers, so they don't hinder articulation whatsoever. You know, you can bring the arms forward, backwards, up, down, and those don't get in the way, which is really good. We have hinges at the elbows and ball joints at the wrists, not a ball hinge, which is really cool. So there's no articulation point visible. Again, adds a lot of realism to the figure. We have a double joint at the torso. There's a joint at the upper abdomen just there, and also at the waist. So again, really nice posability in the body. Really good stuff. And we also have ball joints at the hips. Once again, the lower portion of the figure's tunic or kama or skirt, whatever you want to call that, is of course soft goods. It's a nice quality material, and being soft goods, the articulation is of course not hindered there at the hips, which is great to see. We also have hinges at the knees and a swivel cut at the top of the boot just there. Again, you do have to get this figure in a sweet spot to stop him from tumbling over, I've found. And then we have the standard hinge and rocker at the ankle. So really good articulation on this figure. Like I said, when it comes to posing this guy up with the weapons, you can get him in some superb poses, And with articulation aside, let's dive in and take a look at some of the accessories that this figure comes with. So the first weapon that Savage comes with is the double-bladed lightsaber, and I'll be honest, this is probably my least favourite of the two accessories included, just because it's the least exciting. We've seen double-bladed lightsabers numerous times in the Black series. This is nothing special. The paint applications also leave a little bit to be desired on this one. As you can see, the hilt it's not painted, it's cast in this relay bland grey plastic with very minimal paint applications in the way of details. You do have some black details on the hilt, on the grip, as you can see. But yeah, there's just not a great deal going on. It's not particularly exciting. The figure looks great with it, don't get me wrong, but just as a weapon in and of itself, it's just not overly exciting to me personally. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It's just not my preferred weapon of the two that are included with the figure. What I do like about it is that there is a loop on the hilt itself, and as always, both blades can be removed, and you can then place the hilt on Savage's belt, which I'll give you a look at later on in the review. But yeah, pretty standard stuff. Like I said, nothing really to write home about. Sculpt wise it's fine, but paint applications could do with some work. But most impressive is this vibro axe that the figure includes, and everything that is so good about the figure continues into this weapon, sculpted detail wise at least. Look at all those dints and dings in the blade. That detail is really nicely defined. That spike looks vicious. And yeah, it's just a really cool looking weapon. I absolutely love that Hasbro included this. It does give me a little bit of nostalgia as well for the Clone Wars figure that was released all the way back in sort of 2010, 2011. If you remember, that figure came with two versions of this weapon, one of which was a missile firing vibro axe. So they don't come much more badass than that. That would have been a nice little nod if they'd included that with this figure, but nonetheless, a great accessory. Like I said, really well sculpted. Again, great paint applications as well. Nice metallic finish on the blade itself, and then this dull matte coat on the handle, which just looks great. And yeah, I'm really impressed with this weapon, and I love that it was included. And as I mentioned earlier, there is the lightsaber hilt placed on the hook on Savage's belt. It's nice and secure. It does, you know, wobble around a little bit, but it's not going to go anywhere once it's in place. Obviously, unless the figure does take a tumble off your shelf. But from a display standpoint, I think this looks really good. I think this is going to be how I display the figure on the shelf with the vibro axe in hand. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this figure with those accessories. So here is Savage in all his glory, lightsaber hooked, vibro axe in hand, and just looking so cool. What an absolute home run of a figure this is. Hasbro nailed it, hit it out of the park. They've done an incredible job with this figure, and this definitely sets the standard going forward for deluxe figures, in my opinion, especially when it comes to paint applications and just overall size. I think, you know, sometimes the deluxe price point can be a little bit tough to swallow, and I don't necessarily agree with it in all instances. When a figure is released and it's bigger than your average figure, comes with some really cool accessories, and is painted this well, I can't really argue with it. And, you know, there are figures that I've paid a little bit more for in the past, and when I've opened them up, I've thought, this doesn't really warrant the price. With this figure, I don't regret spending a penny on it. I'm really happy with it. Thrilled to be able to add it to my collection. And like I said, Savage Opress is a character that we've wanted in the Black series for so long, and this one does not disappoint. If a vintage collection release is anywhere near the quality of this figure, then I think 3 3/4 inch collectors are going to be very happy when this one ultimately gets released as well. But like I said, just an absolutely superb release. Everything about it is fantastic, and once again, it's a top contender for Black Series Figure of the Year, in my opinion. They've done a really good job with this one. So that all but concludes this review on Savage Opress from Star Wars The Black Series. Once again, an absolutely incredible figure, and as promised, here is that size comparison with other characters from the Clone Wars in the Black Series. Here we have him alongside Maul, who isn't a small figure by any stretch. He's your standard 6-inch Black Series figure, but you can see just how much Savage towers above him. And just for that bit of size variation, we have him alongside Ahsoka from Season 3 as well. But yeah, just a hulking beast of a figure. And like I said, the sheer size of this one does make that deluxe price point a little bit of an easier pill to swallow, at least in my opinion. I know it's not to everyone's taste and budget, but I'm not disappointed that I spent, I think, £34 on this figure. I think I've gotten my value for money. It doesn't disappoint. It's worth every penny in my opinion, because like I said, it's a character we've wanted in the Black Series for so long, and Hasbro, you can tell, poured everything they had into this one. Like I said, sculpted detail, 10 out of 10, articulation, absolutely perfect, and the accessories, paint applications, all that usual stuff, just absolutely knocked out of the park, and I can't recommend this figure enough. So once again, be sure to hit the link in the video description if you'd like to purchase this one for yourself, and I will be back with some more Black Series bangers very soon. So as always, thank you for tuning in, keep collecting, and until next time, may the Force be with you.